Do you remember the remaster of the GTA Trilogy that came out 3 years ago? Well, here's how it looks now. On November 12, 2024, GTA Trilogy received a major update for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. 3 games received the new features we previously saw in the mobile version of the Definitive Edition. However, as I explored the update on PC, it became clear that the developers also carried over some bugs and issues from the mobile release. So, what's the updated GTA Trilogy all about? That's exactly what we are gonna talk about in this video. You've probably already heard about the controversy between Rockstar and Grove Street Games over the missing credit on the main menu. So let's skip that and dive right in. When you fire up any of the 3 games, the first thing you will notice is the updated graphics. More vibrant, warmer, and especially in Vice City and San Andreas, reminiscent of the original look these games had on the PlayStation 2 back in 2000s. This effect is a part of a new feature called Classic Lighting. You can find it in the settings and turn it off if you prefer the default visuals, which are more realistic but a bit lifeless. In GTA 3, the classic lighting creates an atmosphere reminiscent of Liberty City stories, which feels a bit odd and honestly out of place. Classic GTA 3 never looked like that. On the other hand, in Vice City, the change fits well. The atmosphere now feels warmer and more in line with the original PS2 version of the game. As for San Andreas, it's a step further. Not only does the classic lighting pay homage to the original, but the game also brings back the unique color palette for each area. For reference, in the Definitive Edition, no matter where you are in San Andreas, the time cycle always felt tuned for Los Santos. On top of that, San Andreas now has improved fog that beautifully obscures distant areas. It's a big improvement over the faint haze they added earlier to address the complete lack of fog in the first version of the Definitive Edition. The entire trilogy also features improved clouds, but you will only get to fully appreciate them if you enable classic lighting. Shadows now move slowly and naturally instead of the abrupt, jerky movements seen in earlier versions. But some of the new changes turned out to be quite controversial. For instance, in the earlier remasters, you could open the pause menu right in the middle of a cutscene. But with the latest patch, while you can still pause the cutscene, you can no longer access the full pause menu during that time. Speaking of the pause menu, there have been some updates across all 3 games in the trilogy. For example, in the options section, you can find the version number of the game. Previously, it was located on the right side, but after the patch, it's been moved to the left. The save list also got an update, and now it shows the exact date and time when each save was made. The weapon and radio selection wheels have some minor design tweaks as well. Before, the background of these wheels had a unique color for each game: gold for GTA 3, pink for Vice City, and green for San Andreas. Now for some reason the background is colorless. Honestly, I don't really see why they decided to remove those unique colors for each game. Some effects were also carried over from the mobile port, but in some cases this might not have been the best decision. The fire effect, for instance, looks pretty decent, even though I was perfectly fine with the old one, but for many it had a rather specific style. The dust kicked up by the wheels seems fine too, and is actually more noticeable than before. But what really took a hit, it's a water splash effect. It now looks much more subdued, which definitely doesn't do the visuals any favors. When it comes to a fire hydrant, it's more like a gas leak than water. And what's especially disappointing is the smoke coming from under the hood. It used to be pretty noticeable, which made it easy to gauge the condition of the car, giving players something to go on. But now it's just a faint puff of smoke, so a car fire could catch players completely off guard. I'm sure some other effects have been changed too, and it's easy to understand why things like the water or the smoke were simplified in the mobile version, but why they made these changes on PC is completely beyond me. The cars in the trilogy are now so light that the main character can easily push them as if they were just empty boxes. But it's hard to call a mistake since cars were pushed around just as easily in the original games. Busted inscription during the main character's arrest has gotten bigger, while the wasted inscription has gotten smaller. Some textures have been reworked to look more authentic. A good example of this is the sign near Claude's first safe house. Some textures have also been corrected, fixing previous mistakes. You can see this on the sticker on the doors at the first hideout. The public bathroom where Claude and Ray Machowski used to meet has finally been fixed back to a man's room. Before, due to a ridiculous mistake, the main character was getting missions in the women's restroom. The music in Salvatore Leone's mansion has been fixed and no longer cuts off. In Vice City, the model ship no longer sticks out of the roof at the film studio. The next change is absolutely crazy. In the updated GTA San Andreas, during missions where Claude appears, the developers now use the exact same character model from the GTA 3 Definitive Edition, where Claude is the main protagonist. Previously in San Andreas, we at least saw a younger version of Claude. Sure, the model was pretty rough, but it's made sense since the events of San Andreas take place 9 years before GTA 3. Now there is no trace of a younger Claude at all, it's just a straight-up copy of the same character model. I assume that while addressing one of the trilogy's most infamous issues, character appearances, the developers took the easiest route by reusing an existing model and texture for Claude from another game, completely disregarding the narrative logic of the GTA trilogy. In my opinion, this is a serious mistake that directly impacts the storyline. One of the truly great details is that now, after completing the very first mission where the Ballas gang disrupts the Johnson family's funeral, the grave will finally be properly buried, something that wasn't even in the original version. Before the burial, the grave will also have the correct collision, which was also missing in the original game. The same goes for the Ballas grave, whose funeral is later interrupted by the Johnson brothers. In the Johnson house on Grove Street, there is a notebook that after a certain update became a bit smaller, leaving a visible mark where it used to be. This small detail has now been fixed, and it's far from the only minor issue from the previous version that has been addressed. Here a few more interesting examples. The red fire in the center of Blueberry Farm is no longer there. The brown streak lettering on the train has been fixed. The gravestone textures at Palomino Creek Cemetery have also been patched. The wooden fence now breaks properly, just like in the original. In the previous patch, when CJ was crouching, his model looked… well, that's how it looked. In the new patch, they finally fixed that. Same goes for the animation when CJ drinks soda. Tire smoke has also been updated. Previously, for some weird reason, the tire smoke was black, but now this mistake has been fixed. The military SUV Patriot now comes in a green paint job. Sure, it's not the original desert color, but it's still better than the weird red color from the early Definitive Edition versions. And judging by the photos of its real-life counterpart, green actually works pretty well for this vehicle. So let's be real, the original desert color would have been even more fitting for San Andreas. CJ finally getting the hang of staying afloat. The oil rings out in the desert aren't just sitting idle anymore, they're back in business. The famous rooster in Las Payasadas is pecking again. The sprung can is spinning too, just like in the good old days. Even the donut in Fort Carson and the sign across the street are back in action. But here's a rare one. This time they brought over a bug from the mobile version instead of something useful. Remember how the mirrors in tattoo parlets used to look? Well, now you won't see a proper reflection in them anymore. So let's sum it up. It looks like the new patch has a lot more pros than cons, and looking at all this, you kinda wanna say something like, well done, they've got it when they want to. But it's hard to ignore the fact that this edition, in roughly this form, if not better, should have been like this from the start, not 3 years after release. Still, in any case, it's a step in the right direction. Although there's a concern that this might be the last major update for the Definitive Edition. I hope that assumption's wrong, cause there are still plenty of issues in these games. Textures holes, objects collision problems, weird animations, misplaced grass, unnecessary objects, clunky vehicle camera controls in the PC version, and a bunch of other troublesome problems that still make this remaster unworthy of such a bold name as the Definitive Edition. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Take care and see ya next time.